Winston Churchill. They were trying to put through a bill called the People's Budget. In all intents and purposes, if you actually look at the People's Budget, it's a bloody good document. A really good document. But it was a smokescreen. Because they needed this. This is what they needed. So anyway, I don't know if you know this, but in 1910, when Edward VII was the king, there was two general elections. I don't know if you know this. There was one in January, one in December. Our first one in January ended up with a hung parliament. Do you know what hung parliament is? Yeah? There was no majority. It was based on the seats were contained within equal seating. As with Lloyd George's help and Winston Churchill's help, presented to Edward VII the 1910 Parliament Act, which is, all intents and purposes, this document. Edward VII read it, supposedly, and said to Asquith, to put this document through will cause, or make this bill an act, will cause a constitutional crisis, and sent it back. I don't know if you know the process, but a bill comes into the House of Commons or the House of Lords or a private member's bill. They're bounced about like this, and all the amendments are done, blah, 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 blah. Once it's done, the House of Commons puts what's called a Speaker's Certificate on it, and then it goes off to the Queen for her to put a moniker on it. Royal Assent, that's called. That's the three system, that's how it's meant to come in. When Edward VII sent it back, saying it would cause a constitutional crisis, because he realised what was wrote in this document. And what this document took away was the need for royal assent, and it actually took away the powers of the House of Lords to stop any bill coming through Parliament, no matter what they put through. They could put a bill through tomorrow that says that all blue-eyed babies on Tuesdays born at 10 o'clock have to be killed, and there is nothing that can stop them from doing it. Nothing. Because of this piece of paper. But would you accept that? Why do you accept everything else that's done this? Why don't we just turn around and say, no, we're not doing this no more? Edward VII died in the latter part of 1910 from a heart attack. And we had a new king come to the throne, it was George V. And George V was a little bit green in the gills, supposedly. Didn't really understand the Constitution, plus he'd been taught by Bailey. Sir Henry Martin, if I remember rightly. Anyway, cut a long story short, Asquith decided to present the 1911 bill to George V. He sent about 20 letters, private letters, went across from Asquith to King George. And these are on the internet if you want to go and have a look at them, so you can actually see the wording that was used. If you get a little book by Roy Jenkins about the Liberal Party, you'll find that they boast about how Asquith persuaded the king. They boast about the fact. And I got that from Ashridge. I don't know if you know heard of Ashridge. Ashridge is a training college for Fabians in, is it Hertfordshire? It is Herts, isn't it? I just wondered if it crossed the border. And do you know what their business slogan, because it's a business school, do you know what their slogan is? Make money from global warming. Go and look it up yourself. Don't worry about global warming, make money from it. I had to pick up this little book up there, because they've got a book thing that you just pay a quid for 3 or 4 books or whatever you buy, and we just happened to pick this book up. So what happened was, George V, this is what they needed to do. At the time, there was a Conservative majority within the House of Lords that was stopping all money bills going through. So what they needed to do was to take the powers away from them Lords. To do that, they created what's called a second chamber. The second chamber was to be filled with Liberal peers. This was the start of the process of what they called popular peer and not hereditary. If any of you know what Mr. Blair did, bless his heart, to the House of Lords a few years ago, what did he do? He booted out the rest of the hereditary peers. This process started in 1911. So what they did is they needed but they needed to get the majority within the House of Commons. It wasn't just good enough to get. Remember, they had a hung parliament. So in the last ever election in 1910 was the last time elections were spread over a week. I don't know if you know this, they used to take over a week. It was the last ever one. They needed to control the Commons. This is what Lloyd George and Churchill were up to. So they employed the services of none other than Sinn Féin. In doing this, they created the seat. This is how close it was. The Conservatives got 271 seats. The Liberals, using Sinn Féin, got 272. That's how close it was. The only reason the second general election actually happened was because Edward VII said, you cannot curtail the powers of the House of Lords without putting it to the people. So to do it, you have to put it via general election. That's why there was two general elections. Now, the interesting part about this is that George V, for whatever reason, did create them peers. And that second chamber of peers started to control everything else the rest of the peers were doing. If you look at the 1946 Parliament Act, which is the next one on from this one, you'll find that the House of Lords was then contained within only 3 sessions. They could only look at anything. And I don't know if you know this, but none of the amendments are actually looked at. I don't know if you probably don't know this, but the amendments actually just get tagged on. It's all you can go and find the stuff out here, don't think it's true. But it's an interesting word to me because one of the things it says here, money bill having been passed by the House of Commons and sent up to the House of Lords at least 1 month before the end of the session is not passed by the House of Lords without amendment within 1 month after it has been sent up to the House. They do write some bollocks, these people. I could write this in a sentence. Up to the House of Bill. The bill shall, unless the House of Commons direct to the contrary, be presented to His Majesty to become an Act of Parliament on the royal assent being signified, notwithstanding that the House of Lords have not consented to the bill. Now, if you don't understand what the word notwithstanding means, it means in spite of. Complete override of the House of Lords. On money bills. If you carry on through the Act, you'll find that for all bills, whether they be money, public or private, in this document. It gets better. If you go on the House of Ireland site, if you go on the opposite site, I don't know if you've ever done this, but go on the one that's called Bills Going Through Parliament. Okay, just type that into Google. Bills going through Parliament. And you will get a list of all the bills going through Parliament as of now. Yeah? And they've all got a certain wording at the top of them. And what you'll find that wording says is this. It says, be enacted. Now, it says that because if you write at the top of something and you give it to someone saying, be enacted, there's not much of a choice, is there? Now, I could be just saying that because the words. But if you actually look at what they put at the beginning of it, of the second paragraph down, you'll see it says, be it therefore enacted. Do you know what the word therefore means? If you put therefore before something, it means that you've already logically concluded it's going to happen. This was a royal assent override. Whether you believe it or not, it was. When you suddenly realise that now the speaker's certificate is actually good enough as royal assent. It basically is the royal assent. So when you see this that's written in the back of here, it says, any certificate of the Speaker of the House of Commons given under this Act shall be conclusive for all purposes and shall not be questioned in any court of law. In their own words, in black and white. I ask you, what does that create? A dictatorship. In their own words.